Interested in real estate? How about wealth? Well, they go hand in hand. And here, you'll learn all about it. Welcome to Be the Bank, a podcast where we discuss and debate the topics centered around real estate investing. Your host, Justin Bogard, shares insights into investing in real estate to create real wealth and passive income for you and your family. He'll share stories of real estate investments done right, walk you through the process of owning a real estate note, and most importantly, educate you so you can be the bank. This is Be the Bank, brought to you by American Note Buyers. Now, here's your host, Justin Bogard.
Welcome back to another episode, number 23 to be exact, on season 5 on the Be the Bank podcast. Just a few more episodes left till the end of the season. Today, we are going to actually be talking a little bit more about AI. I know we've talked about this in the past. I recently went to a note conference, and we're going to be discussing kind of what I learned from that as well. And you're going to see Mr. Richard Thornton on today as my co-host. So stay tuned. Thornton. How's it going?
Pretty good, Mr. Justin. How is it in your neck of the woods today?
We are still hovering around the mid 60, high 70 window. Today might be the last day for that. The daylight savings stuff is really messing with me. Yesterday, the girls and I went to dinner after school and met my dad because he was on the north side of Indianapolis, which is kind of where we live. And they get off the bus around like 4:15 or so. And then, we're driving over to meet him. I think it's around like maybe 4:45, and it's already getting dark. It's just kind of ominous. So my time zone is the Eastern time zone, as you know, but for the listening audience here, I am on the very west of the Eastern time zone. So like states like, Maine that are the furthest, east that you go in that time zone slot, like the sunrise and sunset is significantly different than mine. So I think it's around, Richard, maybe 7:20 to 7:30 now the sunrise is, and the sunset is more like right at 5. Mm-hmm. So it's only going to get worse for the next month.
It's a little bit like living in Norway or someplace like that. I've been there at both seasons. I've been in Norway during the summer solstice, where it never quite gets dark. Along about midnight, it gets sort of what we would call dusk, and then the sun comes back up. And then I've been there more towards November, where it's just dark all the time.
Wow.
No fun.
No fun at all. So on your time zone where you're at in Petaluma, are you in the middle of the Pacific time zone, or are you towards one side or the other? Or do you even know what the line is?
Yeah, I never really looked at it like that. Yeah, I think we're more towards the eastern side, but we never have any argument with the fish out in the ocean about who gets to experience time for it. They don't seem to care. So
I like that. I wasn't expecting you to say that. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So well, I know that
conversations with whales every once in a while, but
You speak dolphin?
Mm-hmm. I speak dolphin.
What's that?
Didn't you ever watch Flipper?
Yes.
That's what Flipper did all the time.
Nothing like Flipper.
Well,
I would try to do it, but I'm laughing too much. I'm just going to make even more.
As close as I can get.
Butt out of myself.
Something like that.
All right. So,
but I will share something with you that was quite odd, and I still don't know why it happened. So in my office here, it's a second floor, and I was looking out of the window on a telephone pole, and I counted there was 15 hummingbirds that had all decided to sit on the telephone line, sort of bundled up together. And I thought, I don't think I've ever seen 15 hummingbirds, in one spot at one time, certainly stationary, ever in my life.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that many before. I've seen 2. My grandmother's got some really cool feeders at her house, and she likes to feed the hummingbirds, and they'll just sit there, just like hover, moving their wings at a rapid pace that no one can even tell they're even moving. So anyways, I wanted to bring up Note Expo because I just went there.
Let's talk about whales and hummingbirds.
No, let's not.
Okay.
This is not be the bird or be the whale. This is be the bank.
We'll teach you how to be the bird, how to give somebody the bird.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So in Dallas, Texas, for those of you that are just listening to us, we also film and stream this on our American Note Buyers YouTube channel. So come check us out there. So this is an event that I go to annually. You did not go this year, but I went this year. I'm sorry, what?
I was a bad boy. I did not.
You're a bad boy. No. Well, it's fun. We get to see a lot of our people in the note community that we know throughout the year, and we don't get to see them in person a whole lot, but it's kind of cool. Everyone meets at one spot. So this is kind of the biggest one in the year. There are other conferences out there for note investing, but this is what's considered the biggest one. So we had a keynote speaker there. His name was Damon West, and Damon was a pretty good high school athlete in football, and grew up in Texas. I forget what city. And then he actually was good enough to get a Division I scholarship to a college in Texas. And so he went there, and I think, I don't know if it was right when he got there or during his college season, he ended up hurting himself pretty bad. I think it was his shoulder or something to where he couldn't play anymore. And then so he went into like the financial industry, working at like a Wall Street type of job. I'm trying to fast track this to the end, Richard. So
fast track.
Yeah. He ended up, after a few years doing that, got into like meth and got into some drugs. And then he ended up being like I don't know if you call him a professional burglar, but basically he was breaking into people's houses and stuff. And then eventually he got caught by by SWAT, I would assume. And so then he got sent to jail, and then he had a trial. And during the trial, the jury convicted him of so many counts of burglary, and they suggested to the judge to sentence him for life in prison, which life in prison in the state of Texas, I believe, is like over 70 years. So they did convict him of that, and they put him in jail, and they went to a supermax facility in the state of Texas. I forget where. I think this is close to Dallas or maybe closer to Houston. But he went there, and so he has to go to jail, and he's telling about the story about how he's just this this younger white kid. I would say he's probably like maybe in his let's just call it like late 20s, early 30s. And so he goes to jail for about 6 or 7 years and tells his stories about how he has to get along with people and stuff. And his whole thing about the story was being a coffee bean. And so after about 6 or 7 years, the probation or the parole hearing came up for him, his first parole hearing, and they basically said, like, you have just changed this jail, and we want to understand like how this happened and stuff. And so he was explaining the story about how he was just trying to be a coffee bean, and just what that means is like he's just trying to bring positivity to everybody and everything around him. And he got this be the coffee bean from another guy in a different prison. And so he ended up getting out on parole, and he's able to go around to different jails, and he works at he does a lot of speaking things for State Farm agencies and stuff, and speaking about his inspirational story and stuff. So he's done like a couple of college teams, Clemson, Alabama. He's done this stuff for like the Dallas Cowboys, and it's a really cool motivational thing. So anyways, his name is Damon West. If you guys look him up, it's called Be the Coffee Bean, his book. It's definitely a 2-time best-selling book on the New York Times. So that was the opener for that, and I was pretty excited after that.
So is there any metaphor in there about getting roasted or anything like that?
There could be. I didn't think about that. That's a good one.
I mean,
yeah, but you need to. I don't want to spoil the whole thing. I'll let you guys read the excerpt on it. But it's a pretty great story. I'm definitely gonna get the book, or at least the audiobook if I can't get the book to read it. It's pretty cool. But the whole premise behind the Note Expo is just a conference that kind of gives you the flavor of what's been happening throughout the year, and a flavor of what they see is going to going to happen here in the future with, all the interest rates rising, with all the negative connotation that comes with like commercial loans being called due, and how, the office space in the downtown metro areas are becoming very vacant, like 20 to 25+% vacancy. So that's going to be a problem. And I don't think it's going to get any better.
What are they saying about commercial?
So they're saying just be weary of the fact that, if anybody is in apartment syndications or multifamily syndications, like that's not the right investment to be in right now. There'll be some people that can come out okay in this, but it all signs are pointing towards like that's not what you want to do right now. You want to be a little bit more conservative, and the residential space isn't nearly as complex and dire as the commercial space is right now, is the crux of what they're saying. So it's good to be in the note business and the residential side, which is, primarily what we're doing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly right.
So one of the talks, you ever heard of a TED Talk?
I've heard of many TED Talks.
Okay. So the premise behind a TED Talk, where it's just a quick talk on just a topic, and it's really impactful.
I know Ted personally.
TED Talk, his name's Talk. So Bob Repass is the guy that puts on this expo, one of the guys, and he does his own version of TED Talk called Note Talks. And he has a few people always go up there and they give like just 15-minute speeches about a certain topic and stuff. And one of the speeches was the guy for a company called PaperStack, and they're like an online exchange company that buys and has a marketplace for people to buy and sell like real estate notes and stuff. So he's the CEO, and he gets up there, and he's a guy that's really into tech and always is like finding out ways, to be efficient and use automation and stuff like that. And so they were talking about AI, and they were talking about how they're trying to integrate, AI as much as possible, and a lot of their, steps that they do. And they see AI just, ever exploding even more for what they can do to our industry, because our industry is more kind of archaic. For the longest time, and I'm sure, Richard, you know this feeling because you've been in the traditional real estate stuff a lot longer than I have, but, you used to have to go to the county to record things. There wasn't a way to send things electronically.
Right.
Used to have to actually review stuff in person, right, Richard, at the county?
Right.
As opposed to like having somebody, create a file or a document for you and send it to you in 48 hours. So things were way different, not too long ago. Would you say maybe 12 to 15 years ago, it was probably still like that?
Yeah, say 15, 20. Yeah.
So it's been very recent that we've been able to do like online notarizations, virtual closings, researching anything that you need to do online, as opposed to like going to the courthouse. So you can pretty much do everything virtual now when it comes to real estate. And so they were just talking about how they're using and implementing AI into the different ways that they can close transactions.
So that's interesting. I mean, I would think that would be, as you're saying that, I'm actually thinking that there are some counties that are still back in the 70s. I mean, literally go to Ashtabula, Ohio, and
oh yeah,
you have to. You've heard me tell stories about that, but
yeah,
you have to file. You have to either walk in the door and put it in the filing box yourself on the counter, or you have to get somebody to walk it in for you, and it costs you anywhere from $75 to $100. And if you're out of state like I am, you mail it to the person that's going to record it, not the recorder, but the person who's going to walk it over to the recorder's office, and they set it in there. And so in counties like that, AI is not going to have much of an impact for a while. However, in larger communities, and I'm not talking about San Francisco, Petaluma, but I mean cities, I think of probably 50,000 and 60,000 or over. For the most part, we can go in and download those docs automatically off their websites. And in that case, any county that has done that, AI is going to be directly applicable to that. I mean, we talk about buying lists right now.
Yeah,
they'll be able to use a AI crawler that'll walk through any database and be able to tell you exactly when the mortgage is due, what the dates are, la-di-da. I mean, you go down the detailed information will be pretty spectacular, I think.
Yeah, just even outside of our industry of what we're talking about with AI being applicable, it's just amazing in general what it can do. So recently I just saw something on, I think it was LinkedIn, and it was a post of showing somebody that did like a drawing of something, and they did it by hand, and then they had AI take it and render it and make it like how it thinks it should look. And it was just like, it was so unique, and so it was really cool how AI was able to, do what it did. But it's interesting. So I have mixed feelings about this. At first, I was kind of taken back from this, and I was thinking, all right, what are we talking about AI? Obviously it means artificial intelligence, but what is it really doing, and what are we talking about? So it's a quantum computer basically that's running bits of information and analyzing things at a rate that we can't even fathom. And then on top of that, it has the ability to kind of learn and do things based on what it sees and what's going on. So it's pretty neat in general of how that works. But in the same token, I also have my reservations about like, what should we be using this for? Is it should be like simple, mundane tasks? Like, we talked about whatever episode it was a while back, or should it be like processing things that are very complex and sometimes they need a human interaction to them, or what we perceive to have a human interaction to it, to make a decision that's not only based on logic, but also based on emotion. It just seems kind of far-fetched of how that should be working in society. Because if you think about it, I mean, it could replace everything and everyone around us, right? If it went to scale to the point to where, it was able to do anything that a human can do and beyond.
Yeah, at some point, I mean, I still see it as a tool. I know there were a number of people running around, and I've been following this a lot, as you know.
Okay.
But with their hair on fire, saying the sky is falling, and we're all going to be out of jobs in 10 years and things like that. Well, people adapt. So the story I like to tell about that is, I didn't realize this, but when the mechanical telephone operator came out, remember, you see movies, you see it's usually a woman operator sitting there saying, number please, and sticking all the little, all of those operators nationwide were replaced in one night. So they had a nationwide rollout of all the telephone companies, and they completely switched that old system off and went to the new, more mechanized system that we have an approximation of now at once. Well, that was hundreds of thousands of jobs. Guess what? We didn't have this massive employment or anything like that, and they did that all at once. And so I think there's a natural progression where people lose their jobs and people find new ones. And I think that's going to happen here. That's sort of one thing. The other thing is that the more I heard about AI, I thought, well, it's not really going to be applicable to what we do, because let's face it, notes are just too funky. But last week, I was listening to a podcast where the military is now using AI in drones that will fit in the palm of your hand. The entire drone and the blades will fit in the palm of your hand. And they throw it up in the air and turn the sucker on, and it'll go into a building, and it actually flies all around through all the hallways of the building. And this sounds really sci-fi. It identifies the bad guys. It can tell the bad guy from a good guy somehow, and completely map the building. So before they even go in a building, they totally know what's going on. Well, the uncertainties that they have in all of that are far beyond anything that we're going to be presenting them in notes. So I mean, we're pretty simple compared to all that. Now, I don't think what we're doing is all that profitable. So there again, I don't think it's going to be coming to a theater soon. But I do think it's going to change our industry significantly.
There's definitely a lot of efficiencies that it can add, right? It can analyze things before you buy it and run some of these hedge funds. They get a couple of 100 to 1,000 loans that come in, and they have to look at this thing, and they usually have several people, thumbing through an Excel spreadsheet, analyzing it, looking it over, verifying it. But they can put this thing in some sort of AI filter based on what it needs to be. And they can give it some sort of score, I guess, on each asset, on where it needs to be with certain attributes, and they can plug in there, and then the AI can run it within, like, let's just say a billionth of a second, and spit out the results of what you could have taken several hours to do or several days to do with several people.
Yeah.
So
and so
it definitely gives them an advantage, the larger players, on that aspect of it. And not to mention it, and you mentioned this lightly, on just going through that OCR, the character recognition on documents, and just reading through it and skimming and pulling out, extracting information based on how it's worded and what it says in the paragraph of exactly the information you need to, like, write your next conveyance or your next allonge or assignment. So there's a ton of advantages that it does that way. And then you still need someone to check it to make sure that it's operating it correctly. But there are some advantages to that. I definitely see that. And I agree with you. It's not going to, like, completely, make things to where nobody's going to be able to close a transaction without AI. It's just, I think it's going to make things more efficient and a lot more correct.
Yeah. And so there's also, I mean, more about databases than I do, but another one I was listening to, there's a lot of relational database information that they're already gathering. And just a very simple example that is, and this certainly goes to the big boys, the guys on Wall Street who are analyzing portfolios, but will eventually get down to us. Somebody's, a paper stack, or somebody's going to offer this on a smaller package. But they found a very close relationship between the number of days in which somebody pays their credit card and their chance of default on a mortgage, on a home mortgage. Like people who pay their credit cards in general, within 0 to 5 days, have a maybe a 2% chance of default, and 5 to 10 days have got a 5. And I'm making those numbers up, but there's a direct relationship between those things. And it took AI on a huge, because you could say, well, gee, that's something you could do with a statistical database. Yes, but it's taking a statistical database much, much longer than it is AI to figure those things out. And so that we will see a lot more of that type of thing.
Yeah. Getting granular with those details.
Yeah. Which I found fascinating, quite frankly.
Well, it'll help with forecasting.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
It'll make things a lot more accurate as far as what's going to happen based on what did happen going forward.
And to the degree that people use their credit cards more, their debit cards more, their Apple Pay or whatever, that's all collectible.
Yeah.
You got to believe that one of the big data sources that Apple is getting out of your Apple Pay is they know what you're buying and when you're buying it, and they're telling whoever, whoever's selling something, what Justin and Richard are buying and when they're buying it.
Exactly. On the other side of the coin, it does feel like it's a space race. And what I mean by that is that people are trying to, and we'll just say in big companies are trying to implement AI, I think, too quickly in unique ways to try to be the first one to do something, as opposed to stepping back and saying, hey, wait a minute, let's refine this and make sure this is an appropriate application. Or do we need to rethink, do we want it doing AI, doing this particular step or this process right now today, or should we think about this further down the road? Because I think, other people like Elon Musk has mentioned, like, we're going too fast. Like, we need to slow down as far as how we're introducing it. And I feel like a lot of people just want to rush and be like, they hear the word AI, oh, great, I'm going to be able to run my multi-billion-dollar business off of 2 people, and they're thinking like how much efficiency they can have, instead of going, wait a minute, let's take a step back here.
It's a double-edged sword. I mean, so you mentioned quantum computers, and I know you said quantum, but I don't think you quite meant a true quantum computer, because I don't think we actually have a true quantum computer yet. But when we do, and we're close to that also, pulling that together with AI, what they're saying is that our enemies, who will remain nameless at this point, but they're the bad guys, and not just the mafia type mafiosos, but different countries, are racing as fast as they can on this, because they will be able to crack all of our encryption and everything eventually. I mean, what we know about encryption right now is just going to fall by the wayside, and it's probably, I think, certainly within the next 20 years, all this is going to happen.
Well, that is the other scary thing, is that whatever you hear on the news that we'll call, in quote, the good guys are doing, the stuff that you don't know that's going on, that the bad guys are doing, is probably either advancing what we're doing or what we're saying, or it's at the same level. So it's only a matter of time till a criminal figures out how to break something that we've created, because that's their job in life, is to be the axiom of this.
Right. So, I mean, bring it back down to where we are right now. How is it going to affect us in the next 3 to 5 years in the note industry? Probably not that much. I mean, I think it can help us underwriting. I'll digress just a little bit, but one of my neighbors has one of the largest secondary short-term rental companies in the country. What do I mean by secondary? A lot of people, when they get onto Airbnb or VRBO, think that they're actually dealing with Airbnb or VRBO, but there's a whole white label behind them. So, like, they have any larger property, they go directly to this group. Well, they found out that they're now able to underwrite. They're already doing this. If there's 25 different AI tools that they have implemented, they can underwrite somebody's credit and see if they're a good person to rent to within seconds. And they could not do that even last year. They couldn't do that at that speed.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
AI. What can you say?
What
can you say?
AI.
All right, so that was a good topic today, beating that up. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Mm-hmm.
And this is episode number 23 of season 5 on the Be the Bank podcast. I almost said broadcast, on the podcast.
If you're from Maine, it's podcast.
Podcast. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They would say it differently there. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. We will see you guys on the next episode. And Richard, as my friend Eddie would say, I'm out of soap.
All right, my friend. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Be the Bank. We hope you learned something from today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us. Plus, check out our channel on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Be the Bank, and on Instagram at Be the Bank Podcast. Be the Bank is sponsored by American Note Buyers. Thanks again for listening.